Right, we've looked at the culture, church, raised some questions about that. I want to think about the individual Christian and are all the Lord's people evangelists? When you hear the word evangelist, I sometimes wonder what we think. There's a man just died last year who was a well-known evangelist in my own church, in the Free Church of Scotland, a man called David Patterson. We used to say he only ever had 6 sermons, and he always preached the same 6, But he had an unbelievable ability to walk up to people. He could put his arm around you, and even in today's day and age, walk up to someone completely, put his arm around and say, "How is your soul?" And any of the rest of us do that. People think we were crazy. And he would have people talking to him and praying with him and so on. It's just an amazing gift. And you think, well, that's an evangelist. And yes, there are people who can do that. But I want to argue that church-based persuasive evangelism involves your whole church being involved in evangelism. And we're taking evangelism as just being communicating the good news. So let's look at some of the basic principles. First of all, this kind of mantra that I use of contact, connect, and communicate. You've got to contact people. This is a cliche. And this is so obvious that we shouldn't need to be reminded. But sometimes in our churches we do. You can't talk to people about Jesus unless you're talking to people. So imagine you walk up to someone in your office and say, "Let me tell you about Jesus." And they go, "Hang on a minute. You've been in the office for 4 years. You've never spoken to me at all. And now you want to tell me about Jesus?" I remember a group came across from the States to do some evangelism with us. And I wanted to do, having said all that I said about training, I wanted to do a wee bit of training. And I kind of probably overstepped the mark a wee bit, because I said, when you knock on someone's door and ask them about their personal faith, in our culture, it's as though I was to knock on your door and say, "Hi, my name's David. I'd like to talk to you about your sex life." You should say, "Get lost." That's how a lot of people review religion. No, I don't want to talk to you. It's personal. What I think is personal. So you've got to make contact with people before you can even discuss with them. The other thing that's really important about contact is it's not a kind of like a foray into enemy territory. That you're in your castle and then suddenly you go out and you ride up to people and then you back off. Your contact with people has got to be there all the time, and it is actually heartbreaking. You get out of your Christian ghetto and you live in the context of a broken world. Now, the way I put it is this. You could be living in India just now. The most expensive house in the world is being built right beside the slums in Mumbai. You could be living in that house with its helicopter pads and its individual swimming pools for rooms and so on, and eating your meal and thinking, "Isn't this wonderful? Isn't life great?" And you can completely ignore the fact that there are people who are starving on your doorstep, and it doesn't bother you at all. I think Christians who keep the gospel to themselves are doing exactly that. That we're saying, "Isn't this fantastic?" And what disturbs me a little bit about churches that have a big emphasis on Bible teaching, which I hope every church would have, and I think is absolutely core and fundamental, is that people go and it's as though they get fed a great meal, and they say, "Wasn't that fantastic? That'll keep me going for the week." It's not meant to keep you going. It's meant to inform you and encourage you and help you to communicate. And I think that I heard someone quote it this week at our own church assembly, C.T. Studd, saying that he would rather set up a shop within a yard of hell than live at a distance. Well, that can be really, really quite painful. You really do have to contact people, and you have to think about how you contact people. And that's actually, in our culture, that's becoming more and more important. Why? Because we're developing a culture where it's possible for people to live even more isolated lives. I have loads of friends. I am so popular. I have almost 3,000 friends on Facebook. They're not friends, but you can live this cyber life. You can live any life that you want. It's not real. If I'm Johnny No Mates staying at home, thinking I've got all these friends on a computer, a real friend is not just somebody who ticks a thing on a computer or who unfriends you, which I think is just such a wonderful thing. A real friend is not even just somebody who has a coffee with you. A real friend is somebody who, when you're collapsing in tears, when you have become ugly, when you are ripped apart, when you're a very unpleasant person to be with, they're still there. A real friend is someone you can go to their house at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, I mean, to develop real friendships is actually very, very hard. So you think about how we connect, how we contact people. And I mentioned already for myself, there are lots and lots of different things that I do with the contact to people. I work as a Christian minister. I work with Christians. I teach Christians. I want to evangelize but I want to be able to meet non-Christians. So the way that I decided I would do it was I play chess. I love playing chess. So I went to a chess club. And this is just really bizarre in terms of our culture. I don't know what you think about chess, but I thought chess was kind of some like posh middle class thing. And I was fairly good at it. Low tournament standard. And I went down, and in Dundee, in my city, it's played in 2 working men's clubs. You've never seen a bigger dive in your life. First time I went there, the guys are all downing pints, smoking. They were allowed to in those days, smoking indoors, and, you know, swearing like troopers. See that beeping Korchnoi move in 72? That Kasparov was a beeping so-and-so. And I'm going, this is like on another planet. I mean, it was just great for me. But in most Western culture, you're asked 2 questions. What's your name? What's your second question? What do you do? And of course I get asked, what's your name? David Robertson. What do you do? Sorry guys, can't tell you. If I tell you, I'll have to kill you. So I didn't tell them for 6 months until I had to tell them, because this tells you more about my culture than anything, I think. They'd worked out that I was either an undercover detective or a drugs dealer. So I told them I was a minister, and they're, oh, you know, in fact, it was quite funny because one of them went, ah, and I said, no, that doesn't work with me. You know, so, you know, but it's interesting. That's the contact. I didn't go and play chess so that I could evangelize these guys. I went to play chess because I like chess. I needed to do something that wasn't with Christians, where I wasn't ministering. And so, but here's where the Facebook thing comes in as well. They won't talk to me about God at the chess club. But half a dozen of them become my friends on Facebook. Every now and then I put in a post about Christianity, 1 in every 3 posts. They start writing me, asking me questions, talking to me. You know, you've got to contact, you've got to connect. You're looking at what you have in common. I mean, I mentioned the chess. Here's another one. For the benefit of the video camera, the greatest man in Europe at the moment is, of course, the Borussia Dortmund manager. But a football scarf. What's that? It's a tribal sign. I have a Barcelona shirt because it's a bit like when you support Dundee. It's a bit like when you're driving an old clapped out Ford Fiesta. On the back you have my other car is a Porsche. Well, my other team is Barcelona. And it's amazing. You connect. You find that you have something in common. Now, I'm not saying you go and start saying, oh, I'm going to like this so that I can reach people. No, there's stuff that you like. There are some of you who can't stand football. You're completely uncultured. That's your choice. And you will find other things to go with. But you find that there are things that, I mean, I was in a big argument with an atheist online at one point. And I mean, he was so angry with me, he wrote a review of my book that was longer than the book. And just, you know, he put so much venom in how evil I was and so on. And he had a pseudonym. His nickname was the Manic Street Preacher. And in a throwaway remark, I said, please stop using that remark. Please stop using that nickname. I love the Manics, the band, the Welsh band, the Manic Street Preachers. I said, I am a Manic Street Preacher. You're not. I preach and I go out in the streets as well. And it was just a throwaway, flippant remark. He wrote me an apology and said, and publicly apologized and said, I didn't realize that David was into, you know, post-punk new wave music. And he says, he's a great guy. And I'm going, you idiot. I still disagree with you. Actually he wasn't. It was just something that he identified with, that he could say, okay, there's a connect there. Now, that's at a superficial level, but at another level, there are different kinds of connects. For example, my wife, we were in Sweden one time, and she met this guy, and she said, you have to meet him. You will absolutely love him. You and he are going to be like that. And as soon as I met him, he and I knew we connected. We thought the same way. We discussed different things. You find people you connect with. That is just so wonderful. And that's why the whole church has to be evangelists, because there's loads of people who don't connect with me. I think I'm a wonderful person and everyone loves me. That's my self-defense mechanism. That is just obviously not true. There are people who won't listen to a word I say. There are people I really irritate and annoy. But other people are able to connect with them. So that's the great advantage of the church body doing evangelism. Connect, things. What's common to every culture? Food. Food is a great connect. Hospitality, you have got to... I've met people in ministry who say, we don't do hospitality. To which my immediate response is resign. You've got to do hospitality. You can't be a leader in the church and not do hospitality. In different ways. Food's a great thing. Family. Our children went to the local state school. We thought about a Christian school, decided not to. I'm not going to get into that argument. But one of the key reasons we didn't was we had to connect with loads of parents. We had virtually no children in our church until the visit of Presbytery one time said we needed more children. Don't know what they did, but we now have 25 kids in our creche. The power of Presbyterianism. And so it's great, But what happens is, what do young mums or young dads with babies, who do they connect with? The others. So we have what we call a Wee Rascals group. And that is connecting. Now what it's not doing is the third thing, which is communicating. What do you actually have to say? What are you communicating? So contact, connect, communicate. By the way, I think every church should look for contact events. We would hold music events that aren't gospel concerts. You don't have to have a Christian music. In fact, I'll give you an example. We had a jazz band come and they played in a local cafe. It was brilliant. They played in the church. It was rubbish. Well, not rubbish, but it wasn't such a great event. Why? Because the church event, they went all preachy. And the cafe event, it was absolutely jam-packed and they played different types of music. And I would argue that you've got to think about what you're communicating, how you communicate. So you'd have contact events, you'd have things that you'd look for connect with, and then you're looking about what you communicate and how you communicate. My wife summarized it really well because when I was ill, a lot of time, of course, I obviously wasn't preaching. And even when I began to get better and began to go back to church, I wasn't preaching. And some of the preaching I listened to was really, really good and some was rubbish. And my wife summarized it this way. I thought it was great. She said, there are some people who've got a really good connect. So they stand up and they talk and everyone's, oh yeah. But they've got nothing to say. And there are other people who've got really good Bible teaching. They've got a lot to say, but they don't connect at all. And you've got to have both. You've got to have that contact. You've got to have that connect. You've got to have something to communicate. So I would argue we teach our own individual Christians as well as collectively to do that. Secondly, I want to argue about the open door. There is an open door in all of this. Firstly, the philosophical marketplace. Now, what I mean by that is everything's up for grabs. We have moved from a kind of Stalinist version of philosophy, which was the modernist idea, that only a certain type of Enlightenment thinking was acceptable, to lots and lots of different viewpoints. Now, I still think the Stalinist thing is there. I still think, especially amongst the elites, it's there. But amongst everyone else, it's not. So there's an open marketplace in terms of ideas. This is my truth, tell me yours. And Christians should not be afraid of that. What we should say, yeah, sure, okay, let's go, let's follow you. And one of the things I would always advise when you're talking to people and say, you believe this, what does that mean? Where does that go? Number one thing in communicating the gospel is actually listening to people. Ian Morris, a series coming up, The God Question, which I highly recommend. Even like the title, The God Question. There's a question. Let's ask and think about it. Where is it at? Secondly, witness through work. Again, that's hugely, hugely important. The vast majority of people who have jobs will spend more time with their work colleagues than they will with anyone else. How do you witness at work? That's very, very difficult. What do? Do you walk into work and pull out a Bible, big black Bible at lunchtime, plonk it on the table? We have got to try and teach and encourage our people to think about what they are doing at work and how they share the gospel in and through their work. Now that's basic things like ethics. It's also office discussions or factory floor discussions. It's personal lifestyle, and it's what you do with your friends. And the one thing I would say about that is it's a long, long process. You earn people's respect. Third, in this, we've got to say it's the whole Christ to the whole person. Back to, we need to know Jesus and we need to communicate to the whole person. So, one of our folks just now at church, one of our work colleagues has just discovered that she's got breast cancer and it's secondaries. And this person is really, how do I share? Well, she's got to be compassionate and care about her cancer. But one of the things she can do in our culture is just simply say, can I ask my church to pray for you? And she did. And the woman was absolutely delighted that we would pray for her. Because it's kind of a game changer when you've got cancer. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to communicate everything we know about Jesus to the whole person. Jesus affects every part of our lives. The means of grace. Let me mention those before we come on to the questions and then finish. How we do this. Christians have got to know the Bible. You've got to know the Word of God. I'm utterly astounded that compared with 20 years ago, I'm getting so many students who are coming from a Christian background who are increasingly ignorant of the Bible. And that's crazy. We have got to help people communicate, understand, know the Bible. And we've got to get back to that. I don't get it, but attending church on a Sunday morning, hearing a 20-minute sermon is not sufficient to know the Bible. It really isn't. It should be taught in the home. It should, if it's not being taught in schools, there's got to be other. Our Muslim friends, you know what they do in our city? They go to the state school until 3 o'clock or 3:30, and then for 2 hours they go to the mosque to learn the Quran. What are Christians learning? How are Christians developing things? Prayer. So important. Talking to men for God is a great thing. Talking to God about men is an even greater thing. I honestly believe I would strongly recommend a simple practice of having a small prayer book that you pray. If you got everyone in your congregation to find 5 people that they would pray for over the year, 5 non-Christian friends, it would really, really help. I mean, when you start praying for people, it's amazing how that occurs. We were doing door-to-door one time and knocked on a door. My wife knocked on a door. She was with another guy going around the doors. And we came back, and for some reason, that particular lady, that the door they knocked on, we prayed for every single meeting. It wasn't decided, it's just something that happened. She was the only person in that particular mission who became a Christian. She's still going strong. She wrote me a letter 2 weeks ago asking us to come and speak at her church in Livingston. I mean, I think that prayer is just crucial. The church said a great deal about that already. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. I personally don't understand how we can do evangelism without the church. And I regard that as being so crucial. But as I said, we looked at that in the previous one. Finish with these questions. To what extent do you think your members of the church have an understanding of the gospel? How equipped are they to communicate? That's actually 2 different questions. We did a fairly in-depth study, Tim Keller, on Mark's gospel. And I had some older Christians saying, well, I don't need to do what is the gospel. Halfway through it, they were just, I don't even know if I'm a Christian. It was just, there's so much to learn. Luther, you repent every day. I, as a pastor, have to preach the gospel to myself every day. Okay? Important that people grasp that. How do you think you could equip your church to be evangelists? It's the next question. I don't have the answers entirely with that, or even maybe a little bit partially. But we need to think about it. Third, what are the dangers you can see in encouraging people to go into all the world? It's not without danger. This is a war zone, and there are all kinds of problems. And tied in with that, the last one is, what are the dangers in the Christian ghetto mentality? Staying and saying, we're not going to go out, we're not going to go out. That also has its dangers. So those are key questions which all of us have to consider and work out. I'm trying to do that. I've been trying to do it for 25 years. I'm still working at it, but it's there.